On Sunday, 5 July 2026, the long Independence Day weekend was coming to an end across Alabama. In the Bell Forest community, just outside Daphne, families were returning to their usual routines. The fireworks and celebrations of the previous night had passed. Sunday evening had arrived, and Augustine Drive appeared to be another quiet residential street, lined with modern homes and carefully maintained yards. But shortly before 9 o'clock that night, the silence was broken. A badly injured man emerged from one of the houses and began moving through the neighborhood. He was Lance Baker, a 46-year-old husband, father, and longtime member of the United States Army Reserve. Lance had suffered multiple stab wounds. He moved from one property to another, desperately searching for someone who could open a door, make a call, or stop the bleeding. According to a neighbor who later reviewed footage recorded by her security camera, Lance could be heard pleading for assistance. "Please help me. I don't want to die." Those words transformed an apparently ordinary suburban street into the scene of an unfolding emergency. Lance reportedly tried several neighboring homes. Blood was left on doors and other surfaces as he continued searching for help. Residents who had not initially understood what was happening soon realized that someone outside was fighting to remain alive. Not far away was his wife, 37-year-old Samantha Baker. She had also suffered multiple stab wounds. By the time deputies and emergency responders arrived, Samantha could not be saved. She was pronounced dead at the scene. The emergency call brought deputies from the Baldwin County Sheriff's Office to Augustine Drive shortly before 9 o'clock. What they encountered was not a single confined crime scene. Investigators said the violence appeared to have begun inside the family home before moving outside, as the victims attempted to escape. The evidence, therefore, extended beyond the house. It crossed yards, pathways, and parts of the street. Local reporters later described a scene covering approximately half a block and reaching into several neighboring properties. As deputies attempted to understand what had occurred, another disturbing fact emerged. The person accused of attacking Samantha and Lance was not an unknown intruder. Authorities said the suspect was the couple's own 17-year-old son. The teenager was still at the family home. According to prosecutors and investigators, he had returned or remained inside, locked himself in, and called 911 after the attack. Deputies took him into custody at the scene without reports of further violence. Within a matter of minutes, one family had been shattered. A mother was dead. A father was being prepared for emergency transportation to a hospital. A teenage son was in police custody. Another child in the family, who authorities said had not been home, would soon learn that his entire life had changed. And across Augustine Drive, security cameras, blood evidence, and frightened witnesses held pieces of a story investigators had only begun to reconstruct. In the first hours following a violent death, the public usually sees only fragments: a police vehicle outside a house, crime scene tape, a brief official statement, the ages of the victims, a list of criminal charges. Those details can make a family appear to be nothing more than names in a breaking news report. But before the night of 5th July, the Bakers had lives, careers, responsibilities, and plans extending far beyond Augustine Drive. Samantha Baker was 37 years old and worked in real estate. Friends and colleagues described her as caring, brave, and joyful. Photographs shared publicly before her death showed a mother who attended family events and celebrated important moments in the lives of her children. Samantha had also served in the military. Reports indicated that she spent approximately 6 years in the Army National Guard and Army Reserve. It was through military service that she reportedly met Lance. Lance Baker was 9 years older than Samantha. At 46, he had accumulated more than 26 years of service in the United States Army Reserve. Reporting at the time described him as a battalion commander connected to the 1184th Deployment and Distribution Support Battalion in Mobile. That background added another painful dimension to what occurred. Lance had spent much of his adult life in an organization built around discipline, planning, and responding under pressure. Yet, on the night of the attack, He found himself seriously wounded and running through his own neighborhood, unable to protect his wife and uncertain whether he would survive. The couple had 2 teenage sons. Authorities confirmed that the younger child was not at home during the violence. That absence may have protected him physically, but it could not protect him from the consequences. Public photographs reportedly presented the Bakers as an active family. They attended church, school functions, and sporting events. Samantha wrote about the ordinary mixture of affection, humor, and frustration that often accompanies raising teenagers. Nothing displayed publicly could have prepared neighbors for what happened. That does not mean the family had no private difficulties. Every household contains conversations, arguments, and pressures that outsiders never witness. But it is important not to treat an apparently happy photograph as proof that everything was perfect, or to treat normal family disagreements as signs that fatal violence was inevitable. Neighbors told reporters they had not expected an event of this kind. The Bell Forest area was regarded as a relatively peaceful residential community. Captain Justin Correa of the Baldwin County Sheriff's Office described what happened as an isolated domestic incident and said investigators had found no continuing threat to the wider public. That assurance addressed one immediate fear. Residents did not need to believe that an unidentified attacker was moving through the neighborhood, but it created another question that was far more difficult to accept. How could a disagreement within a family reportedly escalate into an attack, leaving one parent dead and another critically injured? The answer remains incomplete. Early official accounts referred to a dispute involving parental discipline. Later reports introduced claims about an argument over social media posts. But those reports did not establish a full motive, and no brief disagreement could by itself explain the scale of violence alleged that night. Behind the police statements was a family whose public life seemed familiar. Work, military service, school events, church, and parenting. By Monday morning, that familiar life no longer existed. Investigators initially offered only a limited explanation for what preceded the attack. The teenager and his parents had reportedly argued over disciplinary action. That phrase, disciplinary action, is broad. It could refer to a punishment, restriction, loss of privileges, confrontation about behavior, or another parental decision. Authorities did not immediately release the precise reason for the discipline. Later reporting added another possible detail. A next-door neighbor, Sean Scurry, said her home surveillance system had captured audio from an argument earlier on Sunday afternoon. According to her account, the discussion involved comments or stories Samantha had posted on Facebook. The neighbor said the teenager appeared to believe that something his mother had written concerned him or was hurtful to him. Samantha could reportedly be heard saying it was not about him. This account must be treated carefully. It came from a neighbor interpreting audio captured by a home camera. It was not presented publicly as a complete police finding, a recording played in court, or a proven explanation for the homicide. The Baldwin County Sheriff's Office publicly described the immediate dispute more generally as involving discipline. Social media posts were nevertheless examined by some outlets searching for signs of tension between Samantha and her eldest son. Her page reportedly contained affectionate messages celebrating birthdays and school events. It also contained jokes and candid comments about the difficulty of parenting teenagers. Taken alone, none of those posts proves abuse, deep hostility, or a motive for murder. Parents frequently express frustration while still loving their children. Teenagers may also experience embarrassment or anger over what family members post publicly. Such tension can be real without normally becoming violent. The important issue is not whether one Facebook post caused the attack. There is currently no reliable basis for making that claim. The important issue is that investigators believe a conflict existed inside the home before the violence began. What started as words eventually crossed an irreversible boundary. According to reporting based on investigators' statements, the teenager allegedly obtained a knife from inside the house. At some stage after that, Samantha and Lance were attacked. The exact order of every movement has not been made public. It is not yet clear which parent was attacked first, precisely where each injury occurred, whether either victim attempted to disarm the assailant, or what was said during the first moments of violence. What investigators have stated is that the assault began inside. The victims then attempted to get away from the house and obtain help. Instead of ending at the doorway, the violence allegedly followed them outside. That movement is one of the most significant features of the case. It suggests that Samantha and Lance understood the danger and tried to escape. It also explains why the evidence was scattered through the neighborhood rather than concentrated in one room. Residents would later describe hearing raised voices and distress. Cameras recorded portions of the incident, but cameras do not automatically provide a complete account. One device may capture sound without showing the people involved. Another may record someone running past without revealing what happened moments earlier. Investigators must combine those fragments with physical evidence, emergency calls, medical findings, and witness interviews. As of 13 July 2026, authorities had not released the complete 911 recording, a detailed probable cause affidavit, or a comprehensive minute-by-minute reconstruction. Therefore, the responsible conclusion is limited. An argument took place. Police say it concerned discipline. A neighbor believes an earlier exchange involved social media comments. Later that night, the teenager allegedly armed himself with a knife and attacked both parents. Anything beyond those facts remains part of an active investigation or future court proceedings. The first part of the assault allegedly happened within the Baker home. Inside a private residence, there would have been no passing motorists and few independent witnesses. What occurred there may eventually be explained through forensic evidence, statements, the 911 call, and any surviving account Lance is able to provide. But investigators say the incident did not remain inside. Samantha and Lance reportedly attempted to leave the house and seek medical help. Their movement carried the emergency onto Augustine Drive. This is where the crime scene became unusually extensive. Rather than arriving at one property and finding all the evidence in one location, detectives had to examine areas across multiple yards. The trail appeared to record an attempted escape. According to secondary reporting, Samantha made it outside but collapsed near a neighboring property. First responders found her suffering from multiple wounds. Despite efforts at the scene, she died. No responsible narration can fully reconstruct Samantha's final thoughts or movements. It would be wrong to invent words for her or describe unreported details of her death. What can be said is that she had been inside her family home on a Sunday evening, and within a short time, she was fatally wounded outside it. Lance continued moving. He was also seriously injured, but remained conscious and capable of searching for assistance. Security footage reportedly captured him going from house to house. For neighbors, the event may initially have been confusing. A voice outside at night can be difficult to locate. People inside their homes may hesitate before opening a door when they hear shouting, especially if they cannot see who is there or understand whether a threat remains nearby. Lance's calls became clearer as he approached different homes. He needed immediate medical help. According to neighbors, the teenager allegedly pursued him outside during part of the incident. Some reports say additional wounds were inflicted after Lance had already left the family property. That allegation is significant because it could help prosecutors argue that the violence was not a single, uncontrolled movement confined to the house. However, the exact sequence must ultimately be established through admissible evidence. The security recordings may become central. They could help determine timing, movement, voices, and whether threats were made. A neighbor told reporters that the recorded incident lasted several minutes and that the teenager could allegedly be heard threatening his father. Again, those details come from a witness account rather than evidence tested in open court. The larger physical picture is less disputed. There was blood across more than one property. Lance was found outside a neighboring home. Samantha was outside the family residence or in its immediate surrounding area. Investigators processed a scene extending across a considerable section of the block. The neighborhood itself had become a map of survival. One location marked where Samantha had fallen. Another showed where Lance had tried to obtain help. Doors and paths indicated the direction he had traveled. The family home represented the place where police believed the violence began. For investigators, every location mattered. A bloodstain might establish direction. A camera timestamp might fix the order of events. A neighbor's call could reveal when screams were first heard. For the residents, however, those locations carried a different meaning. Their front steps, yards, and doorways were now connected to a mother's death and a father's attempt to stay alive. The attack had crossed the boundary between one household's private conflict and an entire community's shared trauma. The most haunting element of the case is not a police photograph or courtroom document. It is the reported sound of Lance Baker asking his neighbors to save him. Home security systems are usually installed to record package deliveries, unfamiliar vehicles, or attempted break-ins. They are not expected to capture a critically wounded man moving through the street and calling for someone to open a door. Sean Scurry told local reporters that reviewing the footage was extremely difficult. On the recording, Lance could reportedly be heard shouting for help and saying that he did not want to die. Those words revealed both the severity of his injuries and his awareness of what was happening. He understood that without immediate assistance, he might not survive. Reports said he left bloody handprints as he tried different houses. That image quickly became one of the most widely repeated details of the case. But beyond its dramatic quality, it demonstrates something important. Lance continued trying to obtain help despite serious wounds. Every step increased the possibility that someone would see him, call emergency services, or guide responders to his location. Investigators later said deputies found him outside a neighboring residence. Emergency personnel began treatment before he was airlifted to a hospital. Initial reports described his condition as critical. At that stage, authorities could not guarantee he would survive. Captain Correa expressed hope that he would recover, but acknowledged the seriousness of his condition. By Wednesday, 8 July, secondary reporting quoted Correa as saying Lance's condition had improved from critical to stable. That was the most encouraging public development in the days after the attack. A stable condition, however, does not mean a complete recovery. Lance had suffered multiple wounds and lost his wife. Even after physical stabilization, he faced surgery, rehabilitation, grief, and the possibility of becoming a central witness in the prosecution of his own son. His survival also carries major evidential significance. If medically able, Lance may be the only surviving person, other than the accused, who witnessed the violence from its beginning inside the house. He may eventually be able to tell investigators what caused the final argument, when the weapon appeared, how Samantha was attacked, and what happened as the couple tried to escape. But investigators must approach such an interview carefully. A severely injured survivor may experience pain, medication effects, fragmented memory, and trauma. Statements taken immediately after an attack can contain crucial information, but they must later be compared with forensic evidence. The publicly known evidence potentially includes Lance's account, the teenager's 911 call, recordings from neighborhood cameras, witness observations, physical evidence from the home and street, and medical or autopsy findings. Together, those sources may provide a detailed timeline. Yet no evidence can remove the human contradiction at the center of the case. Lance spent decades serving in the Army Reserve. Samantha had also served. They had raised 2 children and built a public life that appeared centered on family, service, and community. Now, Lance's survival could require him to participate in a murder case against his eldest child. The man recorded saying he did not want to die survived the first night, but survival was only the beginning of what he would have to endure. While Lance searched for help outside, the teenager accused of attacking his parents was reportedly back inside the family home. According to prosecutors and local reporting, he locked himself in the residence and called 911. The contents of that call have not been publicly released in full. It is therefore unknown precisely what he told the dispatcher, whether he admitted harming his parents, whether he requested medical assistance, or how he described his emotional condition. Nevertheless, the fact that he allegedly called emergency services himself is an important part of the case. A 911 call can serve several purposes during an investigation. It can establish timing, preserve the caller's immediate words, and reveal facts known before police arrived. Dispatchers may also ask questions about weapons, injuries, other people at the scene, and whether the caller intends to surrender. When deputies reached Augustine Drive, they already faced multiple urgent tasks. They had to determine whether an active attacker still posed a danger. They had to locate and assist both victims. They had to protect neighbors. They had to detain the suspect. And they had to prevent evidence from being damaged or contaminated. Authorities said the teenager was arrested at the scene. There were no public reports that deputies fired weapons or that the arrest produced another physical confrontation. Once he was in custody, the scene shifted from an active emergency to a homicide investigation. Samantha was pronounced dead. Lance was transported by air for treatment. Detectives and crime scene personnel then began documenting the house and surrounding properties. According to Captain Correa, members of the Criminal Investigations Division and Crime Scene Unit worked to determine exactly how the violence had progressed. They collected evidence, interviewed witnesses, and examined the extended scene. The sheriff's office also issued an important request. Officials asked members of the public not to spread rumors or release unconfirmed details. Family members were still being informed, and investigators did not want speculation to interfere with the case. That request was especially relevant because the suspect was a teenager and because neighbors possessed camera recordings. Within hours, information from social media, family pages, and unofficial accounts began circulating online. Some of it may eventually prove accurate. Some may be incomplete. Some may be entirely wrong. The speed of online discussion can create a false impression that a case has already been solved in full. In reality, detectives had only begun examining the house, medical evidence, and electronic recordings. Authorities did reach one early conclusion. They considered the incident isolated and believed there was no remaining danger to the general public. That allowed residents to leave locked rooms and begin speaking with investigators. But it did not return Augustine Drive to normal. Emergency lights remained. Sections of the neighborhood had to be preserved. Residents who had heard Lance calling for help were asked to describe what they had witnessed. And inside police custody sat a 17-year-old accused of committing two of Alabama's most serious offenses against his own parents. When a homicide receives widespread attention, the accused and the mechanics of the crime can dominate the story. The victim can gradually disappear behind words such as motive, weapon, bond, and evidence. But Samantha Baker was more than the woman identified by police as the deceased victim on Augustine Drive. She was 37 years old. She was a wife. She was the mother of two teenage boys. She had served her country and later worked as a real estate professional. Friends who reacted publicly after her death remembered her for courage, happiness, and compassion. One colleague described her as brave, caring, and joyful. Those descriptions contrast sharply with the final images connected to her name: emergency vehicles, police tape, and an investigation outside her home. Before 5 July, Samantha's public presence included family photographs and comments about parenting. Some later reports searched those posts for clues about the relationship between Samantha and her eldest son. That examination creates an ethical problem. After a person dies, ordinary jokes and frustrations can be removed from their original context and treated as evidence of a troubled household. A sarcastic post written months earlier may be presented as though it predicted a homicide. But parents are complicated human beings. They can love their children while expressing irritation. They can celebrate one moment and argue the next. Social media pages rarely provide a complete record of family life. Samantha's posts reportedly included affectionate messages about her son's birthday, prom, and future. She described her hopes that her children would become respectful adults, husbands, fathers, and friends. Those messages do not resolve what happened. They demonstrate only that the relationship cannot fairly be reduced to the argument that preceded her death. Samantha also had another son, whose identity and privacy deserve protection. Authorities said he was away from the house during the attack. He was not physically harmed, but he lost his mother, saw his father hospitalized, and learned that his brother was accused of causing both events. There is no simple language for that position. He is simultaneously a bereaved child, the son of a surviving victim, and the sibling of the accused. Lance's experience is equally difficult. He survived an event in which his wife died. If the prosecution proceeds, he may be asked to describe the attack publicly and face cross-examination concerning intimate details of his family. For Samantha's relatives and friends, the criminal case may provide accountability, but it cannot restore her. Court dates, evidence hearings, and potential trials can extend for months or years. Each development may cause the night of her death to return to public attention. That is why Samantha's life should not be remembered only through the violence. She served in the military. She worked with clients and colleagues. She raised 2 children. She attended family and community events. She had relationships, ambitions, and ordinary routines that existed long before anyone outside Alabama knew her name. The allegation is that one night of violence ended those routines permanently. The responsibility of a documentary is not merely to ask what the accused did. It must also remember who was lost. After the teenager was detained, authorities had to determine how he would be processed through Alabama's legal system. Although he was 17, the seriousness of the alleged offenses led to adult charges. He was accused of 1 count of murder in Samantha Baker's death and 1 count of attempted murder in the attack on Lance Baker. Captain Correa explained that murder and attempted murder are Class A felonies, and that the teenager had been taken into custody as an adult at the Baldwin County Correction Center. A hearing was held on Monday, 6 July, 1 day after the attack. Reports indicated that bond was set at $1 million. Bond is not a declaration of guilt. It is a court mechanism used to determine the conditions under which an accused person may be released while a case is pending. A high bond can reflect the seriousness of the charges, concerns about public safety, the possibility of flight, and other legal factors. At the time of the early reports, the teenager remained in custody. The prosecution would still have to prove every element of both charges beyond a reasonable doubt. For the murder charge, prosecutors must establish that the accused unlawfully caused Samantha's death with the mental state required under the applicable law. For attempted murder, they must establish more than the fact that Lance was injured. They must demonstrate an intention to kill and an overt act directed toward completing that offense. Evidence of repeated stabbing, alleged pursuit outside, and reported threats may become relevant to the prosecution's argument about intent. But those facts must be presented through reliable witnesses and admissible evidence. The defense may examine several possible issues. Attorneys could challenge the interpretation of recordings, the reliability of witnesses, the precise sequence of events or statements obtained during interrogation. They may also request evaluations related to the teenager's mental condition, competency, or capacity, although no such defense had been publicly confirmed as of 13 July. Being prosecuted as an adult does not erase the fact that the accused was legally a minor when the incident occurred. His age may affect public discussion, correctional placement, psychological assessments, and eventual sentencing considerations. However, it does not prevent Alabama authorities from pursuing adult felony charges. The teenager's official identity was initially withheld by the sheriff's office because he was a juvenile. Secondary outlets subsequently named him based on neighbors and family social media material. That difference is worth recognizing. An official decision not to release a juvenile's identity is not necessarily proof that media identification is legally prohibited, but it reflects the caution authorities considered appropriate during the early investigation. No guilty plea, trial verdict, or final judicial finding had been reported by 13 July 2026. The case was only days old. Before a trial could occur, prosecutors would need to complete evidence reviews, receive forensic and medical reports, present the case through the required charging process, and provide evidence to the defense. The defense would then have opportunities to file motions, examine the state's evidence, and prepare its response. The public may feel that security footage and the arrest at the scene make the outcome obvious, but the justice system does not operate through public impression. It operates through evidence, legal procedure, and proof tested in court. Within days of Samantha Baker's death, several elements of the case have been consistently reported. Deputies responded to Augustine Drive shortly before 9 o'clock on 5 July. Samantha Baker, 37, died after suffering multiple stab wounds. Lance Baker, 46, survived multiple wounds and was airlifted for treatment. Their 17-year-old son was arrested and charged as an adult with murder and attempted murder. Investigators said the violence began inside and continued outside as the parents attempted to obtain help. The teenager reportedly called 911 from inside the home. The family's younger son was not present. A judge set bond at $1 million. Those are the central established details, but some of the most important questions remain unanswered. What exactly led to the final confrontation? Authorities referred to discipline. A neighbor reported hearing an earlier argument involving Facebook posts. Neither account fully explains why the conflict became lethal. Was the attack planned, or did it begin suddenly during the argument? Investigators have not publicly described evidence of advanced preparation. The reported use of a household knife could support an argument that the weapon was obtained during the incident, but that alone does not establish the accused's earlier intent. What did the teenager say during the 911 call? The call may contain an admission, a request for help, confusion, silence, or another account entirely. Until it is officially released or presented in court, its contents should not be imagined. What did Lance tell investigators? His account could become the most important direct evidence. No detailed public statement from him had been reported during the first week. What did the security recordings show? Neighbors described audio and video capturing part of Lance's escape. The recordings may reveal movement and voices, but the complete files have not been publicly tested. Was there a documented history of violence in the home? No reliable public report had established previous assaults, police interventions, or threats involving the accused. The absence of public information does not prove that no concerns existed, but speculation should not replace evidence. What was the teenager's mental and emotional condition? No verified diagnosis or formal psychological finding had been announced. It would be irresponsible to assign a mental illness based solely on the alleged violence. And finally, what will happen to Lance and the surviving younger child? Their physical, emotional, and legal journeys will continue long after public attention moves elsewhere. A true crime narrative often tries to end with an explanation. This case does not yet have one. It has an accusation, a death, a survivor, and an investigation. The courtroom process may eventually answer how the attack happened, and whether the accused is legally responsible. It may never provide a satisfying answer to why a son would allegedly turn a family disagreement into an act of irreversible violence. In the days after the attack, the police vehicles eventually left Augustine Drive. Evidence markers were collected. The immediate scene was released. Neighbors returned to houses that looked almost exactly as they had before 5 July. But some things could not return to normal. A doorway where Lance had searched for help was no longer simply a doorway. A security camera, intended to watch a driveway, had recorded the sound of a man fearing for his life. A neighboring yard had become part of a homicide investigation, and the Baker home had become the center of a case attracting attention far beyond Alabama. For Samantha's family, the public story began at the point where her private life ended. Her name appeared in reports beside the words stabbed, murder, and pronounced dead. But those words describe only what happened to her. They do not describe the whole person she had been. For Lance, survival meant carrying more than physical wounds. He lost his wife. His eldest son was accused of the attack. His younger child had lost the family structure he knew, and Lance may eventually have to enter a courtroom and provide evidence against someone he had raised from infancy. For the teenager, the future became confined by detention, attorneys, and criminal charges. At 17, he faced the possibility of spending much of his adult life in prison if convicted. For the younger brother, there was no outcome without loss. A conviction would confirm that his brother killed their mother and tried to kill their father. An acquittal or reduced charge would not bring Samantha back. And for the community, the event destroyed the comforting idea that severe violence always arrives from somewhere else. Captain Correa reminded residents that crime can occur even in a pleasant neighborhood. The lesson should not be that every family argument hides a future killer. Incidents of this severity are rare, and millions of parents and teenagers experience conflict without violence. The more responsible lesson is that public appearances cannot reveal every struggle inside a home, and that warning signs, threats, or escalating violence should never be dismissed simply because a family appears successful or stable. As of 13 July 2026, this case remains at its beginning. There has been no trial. No jury has heard the evidence. No court has determined guilt. Some accounts circulating online remain unverified. Lance's latest widely reported condition had improved to stable, but no complete medical update had been released. The investigation continues, and future evidence may change the public understanding of what happened. For now, the clearest record of that night lies in a sequence of events that lasted only minutes. An argument inside a family home, a weapon, two parents trying to escape, a mother collapsing from fatal injuries, a father moving from door to door, a teenager calling 911, deputies arriving beneath the lights of a quiet Alabama street, and a recorded voice saying what every person hopes never to say while standing outside their own home. "Please help me. I don't want to die." On Augustine Drive, someone eventually did call for help. It was enough to save Lance Baker. It came too late to save Samantha.